Welcome everyone, and before we get going, I'll just ask everyone to please silence cell phones or personal electronic devices. I'll call this land use planning meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. by formally recognizing that we are meeting on Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to be good stewards of this land and thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this place for thousands of years. In particular, we acknowledge the proud heritage of our neighbors from the Alderville First Nation and the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that Council amend the February 4th, 2019 planning meeting agenda to add the staff report approval of consultant proposal for Brighton official plan update to section 6 of the agenda. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. I have another amendment moved by Councillor LeBlanc and seconded by Councillor Tadman that Council amend the... That said February 4th. That last motion said February 4th, but it's actually this meeting. That Council amend the February 11th, 2019 planning agenda to add closed session pursuant to the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended, subsection 239(2)D, labor relations or employee negotiations, specifically CAO recruitment. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that Council approve the February 11th, 2019 planning meeting as amended. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. We have no delegations this evening. I'll move straight into the statutory public meeting portion of the meeting. And Madam Clerk, I don't have a motion to go into the statutory public meeting. So I'll ask for a mover, Councillor Anderson, and a seconder, Councillor Tadman. The Council enter into the statutory public meeting portion of the meeting, this pursuant to the Planning Act. Does that sound about right to you, Mr. Ty? Is there any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. So in our statutory public meeting, we have a number of items to discuss. The first is with regard to two severance applications and a rezoning request. The purpose of the statutory public meeting is to request a decision of council for proposed consents and zoning bylaw amendment for the following applications: B24 2018, B25 2018, and Z14 2018. The owner is Rosedale Security Limited and St. Mary's Cement Incorporated. The location is part lot 2, concession 8, and part lot 35 and 36, concession 6. Pardon me. And Mr. Ty, by what method and on what date was notice of the consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications given?
Thank you, Worship. Good evening, members of council. I would note for the record that this is the second statutory public meeting for these applications. The first statutory public meeting was held under council on October the 9th, 2018. Notice of this public meeting regarding the proposed consent applications and the rezoning was sent by first-class prepaid mail on January 21st, 2019 to all property owners within 120 meters. Notice was also circulated to all agencies as prescribed by the Planning Act. In addition, a signed notice was also posted on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. And would you please explain the background regarding this zoning bylaw amendment application?
Thank you. The consent applications B24 and B25 2018 are each proposing to separate parcel of land for the purposes of lot additions. To clarify, no new lots are being proposed. If approved by council, the first lot would comprise 24.7 hectares, the second lot would comprise 22.7 hectares, and the third lot, being the retained lot, would comprise 79 hectares.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. And would you explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and what it would accomplish?
The purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone certain of the subject lands from agriculture A to agriculture exception number 1 in order to recognize lot deficiencies. More specifically, Lot 2 will be deficient with respect to lot area, whereas Lot 3 will be deficient with respect to lot frontage. The proposed rezoning will also serve to fulfill a condition of consent for the applications in the event that they are approved.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. Does the owner or applicant wish to make any comments? Or agent? There you go.
Good evening. My name is Sean Legere, planner with RFA Planning Consultant, agent for file numbers Z14-2018, B24-2018, and B25-2018. We have reviewed the staff report and concur with its recommendations and are here to assist in answering any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Legere. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications? Mr. Hutchison, come on up. And if you push the gray purplish button in front of you there, and just state your name for the record, please, Mark.
Mark Hutchison. Okay, just give me a second here. I've had to zero this down quite a bit. Anyways, I'm here to speak on the Ontario Greater Horseshoe plan is now extended out to the east boundary of Brighton Township. Something that I just became aware of last year. I just wanted to go over a few things here. And Daryl, if I happen to speak out of line, don't be afraid to speak up if I misinterpret it. Because there is a lot of material here. And I've tried to shorten it down as best I could. But basically, I've summarized it up. And what I can get out of it is the province seems to want, or they want the municipality and province to work together in mapping protected farmland. Okay, the municipalities, most of them already have plans in place to protect the prime agricultural land. Okay. I'll just go over a few things here. Ontario's thriving agricultural food sector. It contributes to the diverse and stable municipal tax base, especially the prime agriculture areas. Okay? While there are some market advantages that come with concentration of food sector in a densely populated area, pressure to fragment and convert prime agricultural area to non-agricultural uses is strong and ongoing. Managing growth while protecting value resources, including agricultural, is at the heart of the growth plan and the Greenbelt. Consensus agriculturally indicate that between 2001 and 2016, the area reported to be an agricultural fell by more than 10% in the greater Golden Horseshoe, an area approximately 170,000 hectares or 420,000 acres. Statistics Canada that came from. Over the past 15 years, an area more than 2.5 times the size of the city of Toronto is no longer reported to be in agriculture. Okay. Even so, over 40% of the greater Golden Horseshoe remains available for agricultural today. Implementation of the agricultural system will help to ensure this remaining farmland is better protected and is viable over the long term. The evolution of the agricultural system concept. Agricultural system protects prime agricultural areas and those rural lands that are within the agricultural land base. Okay, the PPS requires municipalities to protect prime agriculture areas for long-term agricultural use. Okay. Purpose and outcomes. Better protection of the agricultural land base, collaboration between the province, municipalities, farmers, and businesses with a common interest in a strong agri-food sector. Okay, growth plan and Greenbelt plan. Require municipalities to designate prime agriculture areas, including specialty crop areas in coordinates with mapping, implementation, procedures, and issues by the province, and protect these areas for long-term use for agriculture. The Greenbelt Plan aims to protect the agricultural land base as well as ecological and hydrological feature areas and functions within the Greenbelt area. Am I going too fast? Okay. Consistent mapping of the agricultural land base and use of the common nomenclature are needed to. That means the same words. Okay. Ensure provincial agricultural resources are consistently protected for long-term agricultural use across municipal boundaries. Provide a strong basis for farm agricultural area and rural lands. Direct non-agricultural uses away from prime agriculture areas wherever possible, and set a consistent approach across municipalities and land use plans. Okay. I'd like to point out also that while protection of prime agriculture areas has been provincial policies, this has been going on since 1970. Okay? To consistently identify the agricultural land base across the Greater Gordon Horseshoe, the province has mapped the agricultural land base. And that's part of this plan, right there? The mapping,
A portion of it.
yeah, a portion of it, okay? Okay. Okay. Okay, just give me a second. Page 18. Okay, prime agriculture areas. Okay, areas already designated as prime agriculture areas in the approved official plan as per the most update mapping available from OMAFRA. OMAFRA identified the following as prime agriculture areas for the purpose of its agricultural land-based mapping. And just to point out, most of the land that they've identified, most of the municipalities have already designated it on their plans as prime agriculture. They put a percentage in here of 83%, but from what I understand, that number's changing consistently, so they go with the word majority now. Okay? 24. Just one little thing I want to get in here. The word Northumberland is in this plan also on page 24, just for a point of interest. Okay. Okay. Implementation of the agricultural system policies. Through the implementation of the agricultural system policies, municipalities have the opportunity to actively plan for agricultural and food system. This means recognizing the importance of agriculture in the decision-making and considering how a vibrant agri-food sector can be promoted over the long term through strategic municipal decisions. Municipal actions are expected to fully address the challenge farmers face in local and global markets. However, municipalities play a crucial role in protecting the land base for agriculture. Okay. How much time do I have? Okay. Maybe I shouldn't have shortened it up. Okay. Official plan policies. Okay, the official plan policies are needed to address the following in conformity with the applicable provincial land use plans and being consistent with the PPS. Protection of the prime agriculture areas, including specialty crop areas for long-term use in agriculture, firm prime agriculture area boundaries provides certainty for farmers and the future of farmland in the region where development pressures are intense and expected to rise. Okay? That's basically what I've taken out of there. I've summarized it very brief because I didn't want to take too much time because there is a lot there to read. Okay? I do have a few more comments. Now, fragmentation obviously is severances and downsizing. I just want to go over a couple of the negative impacts of that, especially in farmland. When you start fragmenting, you got smaller areas, and what you come up with is higher risk of what that land can potentially be used for in the future, because you've lost control of it, the smaller it gets. Okay? Just something that I came across, smaller areas, higher risk. It's easier to rezone and divide, and as I say, you lose a bit of control of that parcel of land. Okay? Another thing I'd like to go over is this parcel that's being severed, over half of it is prime agricultural property. And it's in the maps. I looked it up, it is in the maps, okay? And it is very visible. Now, another thing I want to go over is official plan of the municipality of Brighton. And when we're talking about prime agricultural property, it goes right in line with the official plan here. The agricultural designation is applied to lands where the predominant land use is agricultural. It may include uses that are supportive and compatible with agricultural, such as forestry, passive recreation, conservative areas, and activities. The primary purpose of agricultural designation is the protection of prime agricultural lands and prime agriculture areas for agricultural use on long-term basis in order that a permanent, secure, and available agricultural base is maintained in the municipality. Prime agriculture areas are considered to have significant capability for supporting agricultural operations. I could go into all these, but I'm not going to. It just lists all the different lands. But just to show you that it is in the official plan, protecting the prime agricultural land. Okay? And I do have a map showing that this one area of this is all prime agriculture, over half of it. I think it'd probably be in the low 30 acres out of the total. Okay? Okay. That's pretty well what I got. I've tied it in with a municipal plan. Just a couple other things I'd like to say. And one of them is, when I heard this land was for sale or sold, it kind of made me wonder. Because I'm sitting there looking at this land, and I know other people think the same thing. Once you sell it, you lose control of it. And for CBM, and I don't mean this to be negative, but there's a comfort zone there, and I kept thinking, why would you want to give this comfort zone up between where your pit is and where the people are, or enlarge that area? And I was very puzzled with that. So anyways, that's just a comment, okay? Okay, that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchison.
very much.
Appreciate your time.
Yep.
You may not. You will have an opportunity to ask questions, but you can't ask the person coming forward. Are there any other persons present who have comments or questions regarding the proposed consent and zoning application amendment? Candace, just say your name into the microphone, please, for the record.
Is the button still on, or do I have to push? Okay. I guess I'm here to ask the most obvious question.
You forgot
I'm
the first
Candace
part.
Gunter, 232 Aranda Way, directly across from this land. However, was not notified about the first meeting, although did have something in my mailbox about the second meeting, though neighbors on both sides did not receive anything in their mailbox about this meeting. But I guess the real thing was, when you started your description of what this was about, Mayor Ostrander, you said the purpose. And there's a purpose of paper being shuffled and that kind of thing, but I just think, why now? But also, the why now, I'm pretty sure they know the why now, and they don't need to tell us, but as a common courtesy to the people who are living all around it, it would be kindly appreciated. And so,
I assume you're referring not to the purpose of the actual rezoning, but the intent of the perhaps future landowner is on this property. Is that
Correct.
what you're asking?
yes,
Okay, and that's not something this council can answer.
no, but
But
there
it
are
is something
people here
perhaps-
that could
Right.
answer it potentially. And
Right.
as a courtesy, it would be very appreciated.
So I just have to let your question hang out there, and we'll see if it gets answered, okay?
Is it possible it could get in?
They'll get another chance to comment, and we'll see what they have to say.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have comments or questions? Come on up. please just state your name for the record.
My name is Alex Robertson. I live at 58 Aranda Way in Codrington.
Go ahead, Alex.
As the last speaker said, I hadn't received anything in the mail about the proposed changes the last time, but did receive them this time because of the email setup. But I guess one of the things I wanted to say was we had just moved from Oshawa here 3 years ago, and it was nice being away from the city and having young kids. It was nice to get them away from the city in general, having them exposed to the country and what that brings. But I think the major concern we have is because I live directly across the road from the proposed whatever is going to be happening there. There's obviously a hill with CBM that kind of faces north, and being directly across the road from it, I have a concern about obviously the well, because we're on wells there, and what that means to our water quality. The other thing, pardon me, I'm not feeling the greatest today, so anyways, I guess one of the things is what any proposals, and there's been question or suggestions raised that there may be chickens or that kind of thing, and whatever the case may be, that's kind of out of my control. But I think one of the things that I can raise a concern about is what that kind of agriculture may bring to the residents that live nearby, and you can go on any website and find out what that does bring. And if you live within a half a mile or so of any of these kinds of industries that, and I understand they are a necessity, but if you live within a half mile of them, there's an increased risk of, or increased presence of mosquitoes, flies, and rats, and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's kind of, although it is necessary to have whatever the industry may be, to have it in close proximity to families and housing, maybe obviously a concern to those who live there. So it's just want to make sure that obviously that the area that I moved my family to is safe from the environmental concerns that are around us, and also the pests. So, or that could be considered a pest, increase mosquitoes, flies, rats, whatever the case may be. Because right now we don't have rats, we don't have, obviously there's mosquitoes. But if there's a huge increase, then that's a concern, and it's kind of unfair to put that upon the people who live in that area. And I just want to say thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else present who wishes to make comment? Here, the mic's on, you're good? So just state your name for the record,
My name's Al Beaton. I live at 263 Aranda Way. The last meeting where they addressed this zoning change, there were a couple of questions asked, and I wondered if they'd ever been answered. One was to do with a buffer zone that was on the original drawings that the CBM submitted. And the other one was with this, I guess Mark was talking about the agricultural small parcels thing.
So to the best of my knowledge, Council of the Day did not receive the answers to those questions.
They haven't been answered yet?
To the best of my knowledge, no. But maybe we'll hear it again tonight.
Okay. I think that was all I really wanted to find out. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Beaton. Does anyone else wish to make comment on these applications? Sir? The microphone's on. Please just state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Claude Bernier. I live at 156 Aranda Way, and I got farm too. I just want to know what the land is going to be used for. Is it going to be used for housing or whatever?
We don't know what the future use of the lands will be, but perhaps the applicant or agent will answer that question. I don't know. Yeah. Or perhaps our planner has some information, but we'll have to wait and see.
Okay.
Okay.
Another thing, couple of years ago, somebody rented from CBN and they had chicken manure in there. And like we had to close that window, and even with the air conditioning, we couldn't take the smell. If you're gonna put chicken manure on the field, you should turn the field over to stop the smell at least, you know. And I believe it's the same people trying to buy that piece of land, so I want to make sure that doesn't go there. All the running off from that hill is all across the street from us. All that water goes in our water. So if they start doing chicken manure in there, they're gonna destroy our water, because all our water comes from that hill. And that farm is right across the street from me, and it's been probably fertilized and stuff like that, so it was okay. But 2 years ago, it was a terrible smell on that road, and I got cattle, like I got 105 heads of cattle altogether, and never my farm smells like that. I make sure I turn the ground over, so if they do that, they would have to do that too. But I think it's the same people trying to buy it now, and I want to make sure it doesn't happen if they do buy it.
Thank you, Mr. Bernier.
So, okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Does anyone else have any questions or wish to make comment? No? Thank you. Are there any questions or comments regarding the proposed consent zoning bylaw and zoning bylaw, amendment applications from members of council? Councillor Rowley.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to just ask the same question maybe as I believe Mr. Beaton asked. I have 2 or 3 questions, but I'll take a turn and I'll just start with the buffer zone one. Having been on council when the pit was approved and not being able to find all of my notes, I was under the understanding that that piece along Aranda Way was to be a buffer between the residents and the pit. Is there any way we can get an answer on that?
I suspect that we could get an answer either from our planner or from the applicant or agent. Mr. Ty, did you have comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. The properties that are the subject of the proposed lot additions are well over 300 meters from the proposed pit. They would be outside of any buffer area, as well as they would exceed the recommended requirements for a separation distance from that category of industry.
Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc?
Unfortunately, I wasn't on council 6 years ago, but some of the neighbors came and asked me, and I recommended that the pit was a good thing for economic development for Brighton. Also, the land that we're zoning was bought before the announcement of the pit was made. And the population and the people that live on Aranda Way and in the community were given the impression from the large corporation that this was going to be part of the buffer, so they would live in peace and quiet, and they got that zone. That was given to them as a thing. Now, 6 years later, they're coming back and they're telling the people, this is excess land. Well, they should have told them that 6 years ago, and it might have been a different story. But if they need to express existing land and separate it, they got much more land to the south than to be by with the population way, and where all the slopes of the hills are going towards everybody's wells, and the springs are coming out of the grounds. So if you're going to give a perception as a large industry that it's a buffer, then come back 6 years later and say it's not a buffer, it also gives a bad precedence to any other big industry that wants to come to this town and tell the people, this is a buffer, but wait a minute, 6 years later, we're going to take it away from you and we're going to stop your enjoyment of life. I have an issue with that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor? Oh, sorry. Councillor Bateman?
Thank you, Mayor. I emailed Daryl earlier, and thank you. I wanted to let him know I was going to ask a question. Just for myself and others that might not know, it's zoned A now, and it wants to go to, the proposes to go to A1. Can you describe the difference between A and A1, and what does A1 allow you to build that, or do, that A doesn't?
Through the chair, first of all, I'll answer the question, but allow me to go back to the whole question or issue of buffer. If you look at the official plan, schedule for that area. The whole northern parcel of the property that is to be added to that's next to Aranda Way, next to the Codrington settlement area, as well as all the way down to the Willer Road, is all designated agriculture. Prime agriculture in both the official plan for Brighton as well as the county of Northumberland. That in itself is, without question, the most reliable buffer that you could ever ask for, because nothing other than agriculture will ever happen in those areas unless at some point in the future the municipality goes through an exercise where it is determining whether or not to propose the boundaries of Codrington to be expanded. And in that case, there's a whole series of planning considerations that are taken into account. What we have right now is agricultural land, which will continue to exist regardless of the proposed lot additions. Now, the question regarding A and A1, you can, the set of range of permitted uses in the agricultural zone is exactly the same as what you're permitted to in the A1 zone. The only difference between the A1 zone and the A zone is that the A1 zone recognizes a reduced lot area and a reduced frontage. Other than that, you can exercise any of the permitted activities.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So I think there's concern about what's going to happen on this land. That's, I think, the basis of what we're hearing tonight. So what you're saying is that it will remain agricultural. There won't be any buildings put on it. There won't be any, housing put in, but it will remain agricultural. Is that basically what I'm hearing tonight?
Mr. Ty.
Again, through the chair, there's the very top northwest corner of the proposed area to be added is actually designated hamlet or settlement area, which is part of Codrington. That is the only area, and it could be the subject of a development proposal irrespective of council's decision this evening. Other than that, there are no plans known to the municipality as to the future intent of these lands other than continued agricultural activity. In fact, one of the proposed lots, Lot 2, is actually increasing the size of that property, which would effectively serve to enhance agricultural preservation.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley, did you have something?
I did, and I want to go, Mr. Ty, back to the hamlet designation. And so what the community would be sacrificing is a hamlet designation where maybe there could be future residential development. And at this particular time, that is not prime agricultural land, but we were going to just now create a larger agricultural piece, which would even decrease or even come closer to the neighboring homes then, right?
Through the chair, actually, the municipality isn't giving up anything in terms of official plan land use designations. That corner that I'm referring to, the northwest corner, is currently designated hamlet. That runs with this proposed lot addition. Whoever owns that property now, being the CBM, would actually be conveying ownership of that parcel of land to someone else if this lot addition goes through.
For agricultural use.
No, it would continue to be designated hamlet, with the balance of that property being designated agriculture, and the very easterly portion is actually designated rural, which is also available for agricultural activity as well.
Any other questions from council? Councillor LeBlanc?
I'm glad you came up with the hamlet, because when I read the application, all I saw was agriculture. I didn't see anything mentioned about hamlet that would stay there. So if you sever off, and I looked at the official plan, the northern part, which is by the corner, is called Hamlet, but the southern part is also Hamlet. And if they have excess land, they should take the excess land from the south onto Willow Road, which is away from the populated area. And they could do exactly what they wanted there for excess land and sell it. And they still have the road frontage on Willow Road. Because I'm just looking as a large business trying to sell excessive land, they get the same thing on the south end than they do on the north end. And they could sever off more excessive land. The other thing with the pit, the 300 meters, they have just started this pit. This pit could go on for 80 to 150 years. It's one of the largest ones in Ontario. It's got the best gravel. When they start expanding, they start going in that 300 meters, it's going to start going. There's also an abandoned pit that they mentioned on this, that is also on the property also. Are they going to reopen that one, which they should, and go because they're going to get gravel? The thing is, if they're going to say something is excess land they want to sell, to me, as a business person, I would sell the south end because it's much more desirable and you don't have the conflict. Especially when you gave the perception to the public that it was, when you bought it, it was all going to be buffer, and here you're taking care of, we're never going to do anything, we're not going to sever this. So you're talking on both sides of your mouth here, 6 years later, so I have an issue with it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Anderson?
Thank you. In addition to what Councillor LeBlanc is saying, is that corner, that northeast corner, is sort of almost a landlock in there with the agriculture. If it was become Hamlet, or you were going to build houses there, is right along that creek bed, which is was mentioned about the water being a concern again. But what would the next process be if this were to pass tonight? Someone wants to create that hamlet or build in it. You're going to go from this change to the rural. You're going to change. We're talking about this corner right here. Just so you know. And there's a lot. Actually, there's a lot here on the other side. That's not. There's nothing. I don't believe there's a house on that property there, because I looked at that today, and it sort of would lock all that in there. So what's the process if this passes tonight? It becomes Ontario agriculture land and be used for that. But a year from now, they want to build houses and a barn, probably somewhere else up in here. What would the process be for us to look at?
Mr. Ty?
Through the chair, the side road running in Aranda Way already is built up along the southern edge of the road. The area in behind the northwest corner of this proposed lot addition is vacant hamlet land. So that is the only, out of all of the land that is in front of council this evening, that's the only area that we would consider to be eligible for non-agricultural development, such as homes. So the first question as a development planner I would look at would be to determine how we get there, because it's highly unlikely you'd be allowed to cross the creek from County Road 30. So that would mean you'd have to travel on in and then come back off the existing side road through the agricultural land to get to that small pocket of hamlet designation. The cost of building that road to a municipal standard in order to service what few houses you get in there would be not cost effective. So right now, that area exists as hamlet. The question is whether or not it would ever be developed.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. But regardless of what we decide tonight, it's hamlet now, it'll be hamlet tomorrow. We're not deciding on changing that. Nothing's going to change regarding that piece of property, right?
That's correct.
Anyone else? With regard to... Go ahead. I'll go. With regard to the prime agricultural area, the parcel off of Aranda Way, if you will, if the severance went through and the rezoning went through, an application through our building office could be made to build a barn and a home there, though, could it not?
That would be correct. However, a barn might be in doubt because the first consideration we would give would be to the MDS. What type of a barn, what type of livestock. We've heard this evening through public comments that some want to preserve the farmland. We've heard public comments that indicate they don't want agricultural use there because of the smells. So that's the specific intent of the MDS is to determine the size of the barn and the type of livestock being proposed as well as the location. But there certainly wouldn't be anyone precluded from, for example, moving in with organic farming, something like that, vegetables. As well, down parallel to, on the east, parallel to County Road 30, any type of proposed activity, agricultural activity in those lands, regardless of whether they're prime ag or not, they still have to go through a rather rigorous assessment in terms of what are they proposing, what type of agriculture.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman.
Just so I can clarify and wrap my around my head, we've heard through public comment about possible chickens and stuff. It's Zone A now. Could you not do that under A and A1 if it went through that other stuff that you just spoke about?
The use is recognized as being permitted in the zoning. However, you would still need, the developer, the owner, would still need to survive the MDS calculation. I would suggest to the members of council that the MDS calculation is quite challenging when it comes to chicken barns.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, now I'll go to the Golden Horseshoe. The Golden Horseshoe plan on agriculture, they don't want you to chop up large pieces of A1 and prime industrial land. This is chopping it up. So to get there, and you and I have talked about other farms that have the same problem, and they're only allowed to have 2.5 acres in separation and lots. They were allowed 3 lots. They weren't allowed to do something like this. So this is just within the last month. So if they're declaring this as excess land, they say it's excess land. Why isn't it to the south? Because they still have hamlet designation there. I agree, if it's a hamlet designation, we should be building houses and get something because it has some value. But on the other point is that the Lower Horseshoe doesn't want farmland separated and chunked up. If you look at all the big pieces of equipment and what they're doing now, and they're getting rid of all the hedgerows so they can go into it, why would we go chop off agricultural land? I go back to the same thing. The pit has just started. We don't know where it's going to be, and we have to be visionary. This is what's sold to the people of that hamlet as it was going to be a buffer in the public meetings and stuff. It was sold to them. Whether it's in writing or now they're saying it's only 300 meters, it was giving the perception that it would be a buffer zone. So you either stand to your word or you change your word. So we'll find out tonight.
Anyone else? You'll get your chance, I promise. Before we do give the agent a chance, how many lots today are there in these parcels? Because we're moving from a number to what looks like 3 if we were to approve these severances and lot additions. How many are there right now?
I believe we have 3. We have 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
2 plus.
Got it. Thank you. So we're just reconfiguring these lots where they are today. Thank you. Anyone else from council? Does the applicant, agent, or owner wish to make any final comments? Mr. Legere.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to try and address everything that's been said as best I can. There's been quite a lot of comments, so bear with me. First off, only lot additions are proposed. So there's 3 lots currently, and the results will be 3 lots. We are simply adjusting the lot fabric. There was a letter that was released with the notice of meeting for tonight, authored by myself, and it made some of these confirmations, including what the land is to be used for. So it's currently designated and used as agriculture, and it will continue to be used for agriculture. So there's no change to the existing land use being proposed by these applications. I know the rezoning application is before council, but is only to recognize the lot configuration that is proposed. There's some deficiencies, as Daryl pointed out, for lot frontage, technical planning, lot frontage and lot areas. I wish to feel it's important to note that the lot sizes proposed are already established. We are utilizing an existing zone that is already classified on the subject lands, the A-1. So this size of lot, agricultural lot, is already established within the municipality. We're simply utilizing that existing zone, and it's again as a result of the reconfiguration of the lots. So that's a couple of points there. The configuration is only proposed to recognize the existing land use and environmental features. So there's basically a northern portion of the site, which, let me just make sure, Lot 2. So there's a number of fields in that northerly portion known as Lot 2. So there's basically a break in the property environmentally. And so there's a southerly portion. Now that southerly portion is included in Lot 3, which does sort of wrap around a bit. A large portion of Lot 3 is a ridge and not currently farmed. And there's a series of water courses and whatnot that traverse the property, environmental protection zoning that traverse the property. So essentially the property is broken into the north part and the south part. The proposed lot configuration is simply to recognize that existing land use and environmental features. Just a couple of points about prime ag. Prime agricultural lands can only be adjusted during an official plan update. That is not the subject of this application at all. It's simply a couple of lot additions to rearrange the lot fabric in the area. So I just thought it was important to note. So change from prime ag to not prime ag, that's not what this application is. So I just wanted to make that clear. There's been a lot of discussion about a buffer zone. In listening to everybody's comments, both the public and council, I think there's some confusion with the pit further to the east, which is on a different property altogether, and much further away from the existing land uses we're seeing around the subject lands. That pit is much further to the east and even farther away from the numbers that were mentioned. The approximate 330 meters from the existing lot fabric and 480, which I've mentioned in my planning report back during the original iteration in October. So the existing main pit is much further away than those numbers already mentioned. Those numbers are simply to recognize there's a dormant pit on the existing lands that's not currently used by CBM. The pit that's being referenced is further to the east. So I just want to make that clear. And there's no change in land use, as I mentioned. Any enlargement to the pits, whether the dormant pit or the active pit further to the east, would require an official plan amendment, which is not the subject of this application at all. There's no encroachment into this buffer zone whatsoever proposed by these applications. I must make that clear. Just bear with me, I'm just going through the council's comments. Again, the A-1 is an established zone that currently exists on the subject lands. We're simply adding to that zone and making it more contiguous. I've addressed the buffer zone. I think the hamlet issue has been addressed sufficiently. So again, going back to the original approvals, that pit is much further to the east and will not affect, I think, what we're talking about here, this buffer zone. It's much further to the east. If I've missed anything, please let me know. But again, the subject, there's no change in land use happening here. We're going from 3 lots to 3 lots. We're just simply adjusting lot fabric. With the lot sizes, I neglected to mention, the PPS permits lot additions. for prime agricultural lands. I think it's important to note that there is a series of official plan designations on the property. There's hamlet, there's rural, there's prime agricultural, there's environmental protection and certain overlay zones, there's the water courses. There are a series of land use designations for the subject lands. It's not just prime agricultural, and the PPS permits lot additions within prime agricultural lands, and it also permits farms of all sizes. It encourages different sizes of agricultural operations, and the size of lot that is being proposed, or the sizes of lots that are being proposed, are established within the municipality already. Again, if I've missed anything, please let me know. I'm happy to answer any other questions council may have.
Thank you. Did everyone's questions get answered? Well, not necessarily did you get the answer you wanted to hear, but did everyone's questions get answered? Do you have one more? I'll allow it. Yeah.
So when you bought these farms, before the pit was open, why didn't you just buy your boundaries? Why did you buy the whole farm when we had public meetings, you had public meetings and stuff? You led the people to believe that this was the entire buffer. And the pit is going to grow. Let's be said, it's a good economic thing for Brighton. It's good for spin-off businesses and everything. But the thing is, we also had a public, it was a rough ride 6 years ago to get this. There was signs all over the place. I didn't go to any of the meetings, but I put a lot of the residents at rest that they bought these lands for buffers and to do this. Now, when you say it's agricultural, I spent all day at the town office today reading about agricultural and what you can put on agriculture. You can put high-density farm. You can put feedlots. You can put chicken barns. I think so. You have to have a farm nutrient plan to do this. They already tried the farm nutrient plan, and people couldn't do anything for 2 weeks.
Your question, Mr. LeBlanc.
My question is, when you represented all this land as buffers, have you changed your mind?
As I mentioned before, there's no change in land use occurring here. These pits are licensed areas, and if there's any enlargement to those pits, it requires an official plan amendment. There's no enlargement to the existing pit being proposed, so there's no effect to the buffer area.
You didn't like the answer, but you got the answer.
Well, the answer is all the land was the buffer.
Councillor Tadman, did you have something? Hanging on for dear life? Very well. Thank you, Mr. Leger.
Your Worship,
Councillor Anderson.
can we ask our planner if...
No, we've asked all the questions we had, unless your question didn't get specifically answered.
I don't think I got an answer.
Well, I'll let you ask it one more time then,
Well,
and then we're moving on.
whether this information is accurate, what we're hearing.
With regard to buffer.
Buffer, mainly the buffer to me, yeah.
So you're going to get the answer that in planning, without these lands, they have a sufficient buffer. And
Even if there's growth. So if there's growth...
But that's not on the table tonight. No. So with regard to the existing pit, the answer to your question is that there is enough buffer without these lands. The question I think that Councillor LeBlanc is asking is, the proposal may have indicated to some citizens that these were may have been or should be considered buffer lands for the pit, and we're not of course getting the answer I think that we expect to hear or would hope to hear. Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question for the planner. Can you be specific in saying that we're not losing any agricultural land here?
Through the chair, that's correct. We're actually enhancing agricultural preservation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Tai, do you have any final comments?
Only, Your Worship, when we circulated notice for the October 9th meeting, Lower Trent Conservation had provided written comments expressing no objection. I just wanted to remind Council that the applications were initially circulated to agencies prior to the October 9th meeting, and those are the comments we received.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. Does Council wish to make a decision at this time on these consent applications?
Yes.
Gentlemen, yes? over here? Do we wish to make a decision? Do we wish to make a decision at this time regarding the zoning bylaw amendment application? Yes? Okay. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc and seconded by Councillor Tadman that Council receives the report regarding zoning bylaw amendment application Z14 2018 and consent application B24 2018 Rosedale Security Limited and B25 2018 St. Mary Cement Incorporated Canada as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that Council of the Municipality of Brighton grant provisional consent to consent applications B24 2018 and B25 2018 subject to the following conditions. 1, that part of the severed and retained lands of the applications B25 2018 be rezoned to the satisfaction of the Municipality of Brighton. 2, that the severed parcel of the application B24 2018 be merged on title with the adjoining property to the west and having a roll number 1408-206-060-10903. That the severed parcel of application B25 2018 be merged on title with adjoining property to the west and having the roll number 1408-206-060-10900. And 4, that all taxes on each of the severed and retained lots be in compliance with the municipal requirements prior to the deed being stamped. And 5, that 3 paper copies and a digital copy of a registrable survey and the appropriate deed be prepared and deposited with the municipal clerk within 1 year of the granting of consent. And that council enacts a bylaw to rezone certain lands located in Part Lot 36, Concession 6, from agricultural zone to agricultural exception number 1 zone. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is defeated. The next item in our statutory public meeting is with regard to an application to amend zoning bylaw number 140-2002 as amended. Ernest Dunkley and Diane Wren, Part Lot 15 west of Prince Edward Street in Registered Plan 28. The purpose of the statutory public meeting is to request a decision of council on a zoning bylaw amendment for the following application. Z17 2018. Owners are Ernest Dunkley and Diane Wren. The location, Part Lot 15 west of Prince Edward Street in Registered Plan 28 in the Municipality of Brighton. Mr. Ty, by what method and on what date was notice of this zoning bylaw amendment application given?
Thank you, Worship. Notice of the zoning bylaw amendment application was sent by first-class prepaid mail to all property owners within 120 meters. A notice was also circulated to all ministries and agencies under the Planning Act, as well as a sign was erected on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. Would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and what it would accomplish?
The purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject lands from R1 Urban Residential 1 to Urban Residential 1 Exception 31 and Urban Residential 2. More specifically, the retained parcel of consent application B06 2017 will be rezoned to R1 31 to recognize deficient rear and exterior side yards. The severed parcel will be rezoned to R2. Your Worship, this application is intended to fill a condition of consent granted to B06 2017 by Council August 15th, 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. And does the owner, applicant, or agent wish to make any comments? There are none noted. Are there persons present who have comments or questions regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application? There are none noted. Are there any questions or comments regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment from members of council? There are none noted. Any final comments or questions from the owner or applicant, who I don't think is here? Mr. Ty, do you have any final comments?
Nothing further.
Thank you, sir. Does council wish to make a decision at this time on this zoning bylaw amendment application? Yes? So I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, and it has no seconder. Anyone? Councillor Bateman? Council received the report regarding rezoning application Z17 2018 as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that council enacts a bylaw to rezone certain lands located in part lot 15 west of Prince Edward Street and registered plan 28 in the municipality of Brighton from urban residential 1 zone to urban residential 2 zone and urban residential 1 exception number 31 zone in order to fulfill a condition of consent application B06 2017. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion is carried. Our next item on the statutory public meeting is to request a decision of council for 2 proposed consents for the following applications, being file number B06 2011 and B07 2011. Owner Len Kuipers Construction Limited. The location is part lot 4, concession 2, part 4 of plan 39R 7037, 81 Simpson Street. And Mr. Ty, by what method and on what date was notice of these consent applications given?
Notice of the applications was sent by first-class prepaid mail to all property owners within 60 meters. Notice was also circulated to all agencies as required under the Planning Act, and a sign was erected on the property as well.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. Would you please explain the background regarding these consent applications?
The staff report in consideration of consent applications B06 and B07, together with consent applications B08, was taken to council on April the 12th, 2011. The applications were deferred at that time to allow the applicant to address certain concerns raised at the meeting that evening. Those concerns were primarily environmental as well as serviceability. The municipality is now in receipt of amended consent applications for B06 and B07. Consent application B08 has been withdrawn. Consent application B06, as amended, is proposing to sever a parcel of land to serve as a lot addition to the neighboring property to the northeast in order to remedy an encroachment from that property. Consent application B07, as amended, is proposed to sever a parcel of land for the creation of 1 new residential building lot. To summarize, the severed parcel B06 2011 would have a lot frontage of 50 meters, 165 feet, a lot area of 1.66 acres. The resulting enlarged lot would be increased to 315 feet frontage and 11.86 acres. The severed portion B07 would have a lot frontage of 345 feet and an area of 2.52 acres. The retained would have a frontage of 261 feet and 4.27 acres.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. Does the owner, applicant, or agent wish to make any comments?
Jean Leger, planner with RFA Planning Consultant Inc., agent for these applications.
Welcome back.
Thank you. We've read the staff report. We concur with the conditions and are here to help answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leger. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed consent applications? There are none noted. Are there questions or comments regarding the proposed consents from members of council? There are none noted, but I do have Councillor Tadman.
Through you, Mayor, and to our planner, Lower Trent had some concerns brought to their attention from some of the residents, especially across the road where this is going to. It's Ian Simpson who would be directly where that driveway is, and he was concerned with his well in particular, and also that it would be kind of a blind spot coming up the hill and turning out there. He was supposed to be notified, and I don't know whether he was, that this was coming back up again. Would this be circulated to the people in that area?
Through the chair, if this individual lives opposite the road, he would be within the 60 meters. He would have been circulated. We also received a letter from Lower Trent regarding these applications this afternoon. Although they had indicated to us in an earlier email last week that they had no concerns, and this letter confirms that they have no concerns as well.
Okay. There is a water course that runs through that property, right? Yeah.
And the engineering, through the chair, the engineering for the driveways has, I understand, been reviewed by Lower Trent, and they have agreed that the driveways can proceed over the water course, provided that it's constructed according to the engineered drawings.
Okay.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes, Daryl, the plan was good. I drove the property and I drove across the waterway. The driveway is there, and there is a steep ravine, but it looks good where it's going to separate. I went to visit the property. I have no issues with it.
My question is entirely because I'm having trouble following the dots and slash marks and hashtags on the map. Can you tell me which lots are being added to which lots? Well, I'm a simple guy, so.
The northern portion of the property, which looks like
the diagonal lines,
a distorted bow tie, is being added to the property to the north. The property to the north of the bow tie has an existing house, and there are encroachments on the adjacent property, and the intended lot addition is to rectify the encroachments.
Understood. Thank you very much. Anybody else? My only other comment is with regard to the notification from Lower Trent today. I would ask that our new representatives at Lower Trent please remind Lower Trent that a more expeditious response to our planning requests would be appropriate. Mr. Tai, can you tell us when Lower Trent would have received our original request for their comment? Give or take?
Through the chair, I don't have an exact date, but when I returned to Brighton last summer, we received a request from the agencies that in order to provide them with additional review and comment time, if they could receive the copies of the applications when we receive them, as opposed to waiting until we send the notice, which is either 20 days or 14 days. So the office has been doing that. What we do is immediately upon receipt of the application, we copy it or email it to the agency with a photocopy of their fee check, and then we mail the fee check to as follow-up. And we have been following that system since last summer. In this case, unfortunately, we didn't get comments until this afternoon.
And that continues to, I mean, that's been an issue since I've sat at this table since 2003. So I just ask the reps from council to please remind our friends at the Lower Trent that the significant dollars and cents we send them it would be nice if we had these reports sent back at a timely manner. Councillor Tadman?
We can ask all we want, but they're swamped usually, and
well, they have a heck of a lot more staff than we do.
You're not dealing with all the other municipalities either. We aren't. They do have a heavy workload.
Please make the request. Thank you.
Pardon?
Please make the request. That's all. That they be more expeditious with their reports.
Maybe you should, Mayor. Clout.
I'm not the representative at Lower Trent, Mrs. Tadman. We have representatives. I'm asking that they please represent the municipality when they go. Does the owner applicant wish to make any final comments? Mr. Tai, do you have any final comments?
Nothing further.
Does council wish to make a decision this evening? I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receives the report regarding consent application B06-2011, B07-2011, Len Kuiper's Homes Limited as prepared by the municipal planning consultants, and that Council of the Municipality of Brighton grant provisional consent to consent application B06-2011 and B07-2011, subject to the following conditions. One, that the severed parcel of application B06-2011 be merged on title with the adjoining property being 85 Simpson Street and having a roll number 1408108-010-08920. Two, that each the severed and retained lands be rezoned to the satisfaction of the municipality of Brighton. Three, that confirmation be received from the county of Northumberland that septic permits can be obtained for the installation of private individual sewage systems on each of the retained and severed lots. Four, that cash in lieu of parkland in the amount of $500 be paid to the municipality. Five, that all taxes on each of the severed and retained lots be in compliance with the municipal requirements prior to the deed being stamped. And six, that 3 paper copies and a digital copy of a registrable survey and the appropriate deed be prepared and deposited with the municipal clerk within 1 year of the granting of consent. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And the final item in our statutory public meeting is to request a decision of council for proposed consent for the following applications: B03-2019 and B04-2019. The owner is 8597685 Canada Incorporated. The location is part lots 1, 2, and 3 south of Main Street and part lot 21 east of Greenwood Avenue. Registered Plan 28. Mr. Tai, by what method and on what date was notice of these applications given?
Notice of the public meeting regarding the proposed consent applications was sent first-class prepaid mail on January 21st, 2019 to all property owners within 60 meters of the subject property. Notice was also circulated to all the agencies as required under the Planning Act. In addition, a signed notice was also posted on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Tai, and would you please explain the background regarding these consent applications?
The consent applications before council are proposing to create 2 new lots. As proposed, each of the severed and retained parcels would provide for the following. Lot 1 on Main Street, fronting on Main Street, would have an area of 2.4 acres and 174 feet of frontage. Lot 2, again fronting on Main Street, would have a lot frontage of 291 feet and 3.2 acres in area. And the retained parcel is actually the Applewood subdivision, which is approximately 27 acres.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. Does the owner, applicant, or agent wish to make any comments? You're very
For the
busy,
record,
right, Mr. Leger?
my name is Sean Leger, planner with RFA Planning Consultant, Inc., agent for applications B03-2019 and B04-2019. We've read the staff report and agree with the conditions. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed consent applications? And I see that there are none noted. Are there questions or comments regarding this proposed consent application from members of council? Councillor LeBlanc.
I looked at the project. It's very good. And there's one thing I noted. I talked with Mr. Chapman that owns the cornfield on the north side. And he was just worried that when you did this, if you look at the drainage, that the pipe comes in, it comes in across where you want to build these 2 lots, if that was taken in consideration for your drainage. I looked at you already started some of the drainage pond and some of the catch basins were in there. Were you looking, because the north side drains into this where you were there, was that taken in consideration?
Mr. Tai?
Through the chair, the question of stormwater management on these 2 proposed lots was actually taken into account in the overall stormwater management assessment that was completed for the subdivision. They captured the water coming onto the property in its entirety, not just these 2 lots. So that has been addressed. In terms of the eventual development of these 2 parcels, the proposed developments would be the subject of site plan control, and there would be a micro level of stormwater management assessment completed at that stage.
You know my answer because we've got a lot of flooding. I just take that in consideration because Mr. Chapman that owns the cornfield just asked if that was taken into consideration, and you answered it very well. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from members of council? For the purposes of the public, these lots are the two lots that underwent an official plan amendment and rezoning back in the last term of council, specific for a retirement-style residence and commercial zoning. That doesn't change if we allow these severances. Is that true, Mr. Tai?
Through the chair, that's correct. The subject properties were the subject of an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment back. It was passed by council October the 9th, 2018, to recognize the proposed uses, one being apartment-style retirement residential, the other parcel being commercial. What this particular application does is actually takes a step toward implementing those plans.
Very well, thank you very much. Any further questions? Does the applicant's agent wish to make any final comments? Thank you. Mr. Tai, any final comments?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Does council wish to make a decision on these applications? And I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson and seconded by Councillor Bateman, that this report regarding consent applications B03 2019 and B04 2019 is prepared by the municipal planning consultant be received, and the Council of the Municipality of Brighton grant provisional consent to applications B03 2019 and B04 2019, subject to the following conditions. 1, that all taxes on each of the severed and retained lots be in compliance with municipal requirements prior to the deed being stamped, and 2, that 3 paper copies and digital copy of a registrable survey and the appropriate deed be prepared and deposited with the municipal clerk within 1 year of the granting of consent. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council rise from statutory meeting and resume regular business of the planning meeting of February 11th, 2019. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Next item on our agenda is with regard to planning and development reports. The first one is with regard to Applewood Meadows Subdivision Phase 2. Mr. Tai, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further. I'm confident everything is in order, ready to go.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that the council receives the report regarding the Applewood Meadow Subdivision Phase 2, Subdivision 2017-001, is prepared by the municipal planning consultant. The council receives and approves the draft M plan for lands described as part of Lot 21 east of Greenwood Avenue, Registered Plan 28, and otherwise attached to this report, and directs staff to sign the final plan for the purposes of registration. The council resolves to receive and approve the draft R plan as attached to and forming part of this report, and that such plans be deposited. That council hereby grants final plan of subdivision approval of Applewood Meadows Phase 2, subject to 2017, Subdivision 2017-001, under authority of Section 51, Subsection 58 of the Planning Act, and that the final approved M plan be registered within 30 days of the date of approval. That council directs staff to forward the subdivision agreement to the owner-developer for execution. That council hereby enacts a bylaw authorizing the mayor and deputy clerk to sign the subdivision agreement pertaining to Applewood Meadows Subdivision Phase 2, 2017-001. That council directs staff to issue notice of intent to remove the holding provision on lands pertaining to Applewood Meadows Subdivision Phase 2, and that the bylaw be brought back to council for passing at a future meeting. Is there any further discussion? Are we confident that all matters with regard to Phase 1 have been dealt with or are being dealt with in an appropriate manner?
Through the chair, there has been some recent reports of icing, and that was investigated by staff last week. It was determined that a filter cloth had been blocking one of the double catch basins, which caused the catch basin not to operate as it should. I've been advised that everything has been rectified.
This is with regard to phase one, and I know the second layer of asphalt, the final layer of asphalt went down, and we're happy with that.
Yes.
That process, very well. Is there any other comments? Councillor LeBlanc?
I don't know if they fit in this forum, Your Honor, Your Mayor. But Ron Anderson and I, one day we were driving there through the rain with all the flooding, and a couple of the residents got a hold of us on one of the streets, and presently we got ourselves ripped apart pretty bad. And what it is, I drove back again, and I don't think it has to do with the developer. I think it's more with the builder, that they're not covering their sand. They're letting all their garbage blow around because it's a westerly wind going from west to east, and one particular house is getting it all, like the drywall, not the drywall, but the insulation, the plastic bags. There's about 4 sand piles covered that aren't there, that aren't covered, so whenever the wind blows, it blows the silica sand all through the people's houses. And I don't know if this is the forum that we should talk about it to get their, so that the builder and the planner can point the fingers at one another. But it's a big issue, and you were in the truck with me when we were there that day. We got it really bad from a lot of the people, that they're not covering their sand, they're not taking care of their garbage, and they're letting everything run down the street. And unfortunately, they're at the end of the street, right on a bend, and they get it all, and all the cars get it, and all the sand goes. I don't know if this is the forum to bring it up or another one.
It's a point of discussion. Mr. Tai, do you have any comments, please?
Through the chair, there are provisions in the subdivision agreement that speak to containing waste, if you will, the construction waste, and whether it's the developer or the builder, the builder of the lots, of the homes, is bound by the subdivision agreement through the developer. What we have encountered over the distant past, whether it be localized drainage issues or whether it be waste blowing about the property, is that there seems to be somewhat of a disconnect between the owner, developer, and the individual builders, and that is something that we're working on rectifying, either through education, through enforcement, or what have you.
So if a resident does have an issue with refuse or sand or such things, they should be in touch with whom?
Through the chair, I would suggest first off you contact the owner, but failing any remedial action, you contact Public Works, contact the planning department.
Of course, the best way to get rid of the construction debris is to build houses and let people move in. Right? Councillor Anderson?
That came up in a discussion I had with the builders after the councillor and myself had a visit. I was lucky to go, just a month ago or so, and speak to the developer and the builder at the same time. And I just brought it up about our incident there, our situation, and they said they were going to work to remedy those concerns as well. There is another concern that nearby neighbors to where we were brought up last summer, actually, that they still haven't seen their trees yet. And
that's another subdivision.
Well, is it?
Yep. It's another developer in the same. Yep.
Okay,
another developer.
I see it in here as well.
Yeah, it's another developer.
Okay.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. We can chat later. Any further discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Next, planning and development report is with regard to Bond Road allowance, proposed aggregate extraction from Votorantim. Am I saying that correctly? How do you say that? Votorantim, CBM aggregates. Mr. Tai, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc and seconded by Councillor Tadman that Council receives the report regarding Bond Road allowance. Proposed aggregate extraction is prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that Council confirms the municipality's intent to honor the existing 2002 agreement, together with the design construction of approximately 1,185 feet, 361 meters of road, at a standard acceptable to and at no cost to the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Our next report is with regard to Freedom Mobile, 400 Coleman Road, parts lot 23 and 24, concession 3. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council receives the report regarding the proposed Freedom Mobile site plan approval and agreement. That council resolves to hereby grant site plan approval under Section 41 of the Planning Act and directs staff to forward the site plan agreement to the applicant for execution. And the council enacts a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the site plan agreement. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. Our next report is with regard to cannabis production facilities. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further.
Thank you. And I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, but I don't have a seconder. Councillor Anderson. The council receives the report regarding cannabis production facilities as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and the council directs staff to proceed with scheduling a statutory public meeting to consider a zoning bylaw amendment for cannabis production facilities. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion is carried. Next report is with regard to second dwelling units. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receives the report regarding second dwelling units as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that council directs staff to proceed with a draft official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for second dwelling units for further review and discussion purposes. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Our next report is with regard to proposed amendments to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Mr. Ty, we have read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further, Your Worship.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson and seconded by Councillor Bateman that council receives the report regarding proposed amendments to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that council advise staff of any further action required on behalf of the municipality. I will open the floor to discussion. Anyone? We don't wish the planner to make any representations. Mr. Ty, do you have any comments at this stage?
Through the chair, there is a roundtable session in Cobourg scheduled for tomorrow, and with the permission of the CAO, we are registered to attend. We were actually expecting a cancellation late this afternoon, given weather and travel. To the best of my knowledge, prior to this meeting, it hasn't been canceled. What comes in overnight, I don't know. Otherwise, we'll be there to participate in the roundtable discussions.
And you'll bring information back to council?
That's correct.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. And we added the proposal for official plan update. Mr. Ty, if you could please make comment on this. We didn't have much time to read through your report. Oh, Mr. King.
Through you, Your Worship, I could make brief comment. Both Daryl and I have reviewed the proposal. Just so that council is aware, because of the fact that late last year, the municipality issued an RFP for the conduct or the completion of a zoning bylaw update and mature neighborhood study, to which we received 5 consultant proposals. And it's a fairly significant undertaking involving 9 months of work by a group of planning consultants, essentially, in the municipality. We're convening a steering committee to work with the consultants and oversee the progress of the report. A design charrette and 3 public information centers over the course of 9 months. They'll be out in the community looking at the built environment and heritage, as well as updating all of all the many amendments that have made to the zoning bylaw over the last number of years. They're updating it and creating a consolidated, comprehensive document. But because of that significant workload and cost, About 4 months ago now, Daryl mentioned to me that 2019 would be the year that the Brighton official plan should be updated, recognizing that the document was originally approved in 2014. And you'll see in the text of the report, there's been amendments to the growth plan, there's been amendments to the provincial policy statements, there's been new agricultural mapping brought into place by the province. So there's a whole host of reasons why it makes sense to update the official plan to make sure it reflects most recent provincial policies and guidelines and legislative requirements, being the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, but also to align all of your planning documents. So you'd have the official plan, which establishes the principle of development, and then you'd have your zoning bylaw and your mature neighborhood study. Everything would be in compliance. The municipality is also under a lot of development pressure. In light of the fact that there were 5 proposals to the original RFP, it was thought to be a good price and a very solid proposal to undertake the work. Daryl and I talked, and we thought there might be some cost efficiencies, economies of scale and some cost efficiencies if we were to approach the same consulting firm and ask them if they'd be willing to negotiate an addendum to the contract and undertake the work of the official plan, since a lot of that could be dealt with over the same time frame and at the same public open houses, and it prevents having to reinvent the wheel and pay twice for some of the work. So with that in mind, I did talk with the mayor and deputy mayor. They were comfortable with me going down that road to invite a discussion. DM Wills, the primary consulting firm working with Kevin Dugay Planning Consultants, and they submitted a proposal. I wasn't overly enthused with their initial price, and I went back and told them as much. Daryl also had a meeting to talk about the requirements for the official plan study, and then both Daryl and I communicated to the consulting firm, after which they came back and they revised their price and lowered it from $64,800 down to $58,500. I am receptive to that. I feel you're getting good value for that amount of money, because it is, once again, it's another significant workload that is going to still take 9 months, but there is efficiencies with those public meetings and doing all the mapping, the GIS mapping for both the official plan and the zoning bylaw. So it's on the basis of all of what's transpired and the fact that we are trying to realize a little bit of a cost savings to the municipality, that I would recommend that you go ahead and approve of executing an agreement with them. And we're not saving as much as I had hoped. I was hoping more of a $20,000 or $25,000 savings, not a $10,000 savings. But I guess that's because I'm a CAO. I'm not a planning consultant.
Thank you, Mr. King. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council receive the staff report dated February 11th, 2019 regarding an approval of consultant proposal for Brighton official plan update, and further that Council authorize the Mayor and Clerk to execute an agreement with DM Wills and Associates to proceed with the project. Is there any comment? Councillor Tadman?
Thank you. I am on record from before when the vote was taken that I didn't agree that we needed to do the mature neighborhood. And living here all my life, I can't identify one area that doesn't have mixed housing of all kinds, century-old homes to new bungalows. So, but it was the wish of council to go ahead with that, so I can't stop it anyways. And I know that we could split this up and vote on both. But my question then is to you, Gary. I definitely know that we need to update the official plan. How much of that would, and just ballpark here, how much of that official plan update would be in that 58.5 and how much would be mature neighborhood?
I believe it's all official plan. 58.5 is all official plan.
You're correct.
Yeah.
Through you, Your Worship, you're correct. If I may, though,
Yeah, go ahead.
two more important...
Your microphone, please.
Three more important points. In addition to the update on the growth plan that's proposed for tomorrow, the County of Northumberland sent out their draft, and they're developing social housing policies that they're going to incorporate into their OP, and you'll be required to comply. So you're going to have social housing objectives in your local official plan. And that's just the development as of last week. And then the other one, Daryl, is, yeah, there it is. I know through you, Your Worship, I understand Councillor Tadman's concern with regard to mature neighborhood, but it is a requirement of both the growth plan of the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the provincial policy statement for intensification and infilling.
Well, yeah.
And that is, so even if they're not doing a mature neighborhood study to look at the heritage features and compatibility of development, you can't get away from doing an OP update or even a zoning bylaw update without looking at where there's opportunity for both infilling and intensification of development. That's a requirement of the act of the provincial legislation. Is that not correct, Darryl?
Through Your Worship, that's correct. As well, Gary, if I could add, we have also heard that there are proposed changes coming forward on the provincial policy statement. So this particular review of the OP is timely to pick up on all of these proposed amendments to the growth plan and the PPS in order that you're not going back and incorporating them later as standalone amendments. With respect to the cost, and sitting on the dark side here, I wouldn't hazard to suggest to council that by proceeding in the fashion that the manner in which Gary's report is recommending, if you went out to a consulting firm, an RFP, for a standalone official plan review, you'd probably be looking at about $110,000 to $120,000.
How come we're getting it so cheap then?
Because we're piggybacking on the zoning bylaw update.
Just that?
And the mature neighborhoods, they're doing both. Yeah. And we'll get a study that uses the same language and same processes without getting more consultants involved in the aspects of this design. So, through Your Worship, the intent of apart from cost savings is. I've been at hundreds of public meetings and open houses regarding zoning bylaws and official plan reviews. You can only go to the public so many times. And in this case, when we go to the public, we will be going for three reasons: the mature neighborhoods, the zoning bylaw, and the official plan review. They'll have all of it in front of them in one session. Right. And by and large, people who don't sit around this table don't care what one document is versus another document, and often don't understand because they just don't do it every day. When they talk OP or when we talk zoning, people, you just watch people's eyes go glassy.
They typically don't care until it
impacts their property.
Yeah.
Exactly
When they want to build something.
Yeah, exactly right. And any further? Councillor LeBlanc?
I want to thank the CAO and the planner for saving this money and getting together to get it all done, because the official plan's a document about this thing. So I know I read it. I have one.
Be careful of thanking them, they'll want to raise.
Not going to happen, gentlemen. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. There is no unfinished business. We move into bylaws. We will not be reading the first bylaw, which is with regard to the severance and zoning bylaw amendment in the Codrington area, because we turned down the severances, so there's no need to read this bylaw. Is that correct, Mr. Tai?
That's correct.
And we've heard before when we've turned down applications that should a developer or an owner wish to seek what's it called? An appeal, seek an appeal, that it helps for council to be able to explain through motion why they've done that. Would that be appropriate to do tonight, or would you come back to us should there be an appeal for us to be able to provide that information? Your microphone's not on.
Unfortunately, Your Worship, given Council's decision vis-a-vis the planning report recommendation, I'm now caught in a conflict.
So if the applicant did choose to appeal, we'd need to hire another planning consultant to help defend us.
That would be correct if that's the choice of council. And as well, I would be open to likely receiving a subpoena.
Right, on their behalf. So, Mr. King, let me ask you, when would it be appropriate to pass a motion for council then to explain its reasonings?
Through you, Your Worship, I would wait to determine if they're going to file an appeal to local planning appeal tribunal, but immediately upon receiving notice of their appeal, I would formulate your motion and hire a planning consultant to assist you in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. King. So we will wait and see what happens. Go ahead.
You do, usually, if you're going to any court, you don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing, so I don't know why you would even put...
They might have a mediation director.
Yeah. So you wouldn't necessarily tell anything until you know.
Right. But we have been chastised before, not this council, but the previous council, for not putting in motion, in public document, why we were turning something down. We were chastised twice for it, so, by our solicitor.
And we also were in big trouble.
Your microphone.
Gave 2 severances on agriculture land. We got in trouble from the province.
that was a different issue. Yeah. Mr. King.
Through you, and I'm wondering, this is, as much as I'm not a fan of your practice of tape recording meetings, the fact that all of that was taped in public, I would expect that they could glean the reasons off of the tape recorded minutes of this meeting. I don't know that...
That argument was made, okay. And we were still
okay, thank you.
finger wagged at, so. Anyway, we're moving on to 8.2, bylaw, proposed bylaw amendment. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, and I need a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 to amend bylaw number 140/2002 as otherwise amended of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton as it applies to certain lands in Part Lot 15 west of Prince Edward Street and Registered Plan 28 in the Municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Our next bylaw is with regard to Applewood Meadows Subdivision Phase 2, and it's moved by Councillor Tadman and seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council gives this bylaw a first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and deputy clerk to execute an agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and 8597685 Canada Incorporated regarding a plan of subdivision on a property located in part lots 1, 2, and 3 south of Main Street and part of lot 21 Rundle Lane, Registered Plan 28, blocks 51, 52, and 53, Municipality of Brighton, in the Municipality of Brighton, in the County of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. I have a bylaw with regard to Freedom Mobile. Moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council gives this bylaw a first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Brighton and Freedom Mobile Incorporated, the leasee, regarding a telecommunications tower on property located in part of Lot 23 and 24, Concession 3, Part 2 of Plan 38R 1159 in the municipality of Brighton in the county of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? And those are in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. I'll open the floor up to anybody from the gallery who wishes to ask a question. Anyone? Thank you. And we will take a 10-minute recess before we go into camera. Thank you.